All right, folks, welcome back. Today we're diving into a topic that's been lighting up my inbox, my comments, and honestly, a lot of worried conversations among people over 50 who are trying to stay strong, independent, and active. A brand new study just came out, and the headlines are already flying around saying something like, "Creatine doesn't build real muscle," or "Creatine only adds water weight," or even worse, "Creatine is useless with weight training." That's a big claim, especially for anyone over 50 who's using resistance training and smart supplementation to protect muscle, bone, and long-term health. So today, we're going to slow this down, break it apart calmly, look at what this new study actually found, how it was designed, and then place it next to decades of other research so we can figure out what's really going on and what it actually means for you if you're training later in life. If you're enjoying this video and want to help others stay strong, mobile, and independent after 52, please hit that thumbs up. Your like helps YouTube share this with more people who need it. All right, let's jump back into the topic. Here's the basic situation. A newly published study looked at adults training with weights while taking creatine and asked a very specific question. Does creatine actually help you build real muscle tissue? Or does it just increase lean body mass because it pulls water into muscle cells? That distinction matters a lot, especially for older adults, because water weight doesn't protect you from falls, doesn't improve strength long-term, and doesn't preserve independence. Real muscle does. In this study, researchers recruited a mixed group of men and women, many of them over 40. Some into their 50s and early 60s, all generally healthy but not elite athletes. They were put through a structured resistance training program for about 3 months. One group took a standard daily dose of creatine monohydrate, 5 grams per day. The other group took a placebo. No loading phase, no megadoses, just what most people actually take in real life. The researchers measured lean body mass using DEXA scans at baseline after the first week of supplementation and again at the end of the training period. And right away, something familiar showed up. After the first week, the creatine group gained more lean mass than the placebo group, about a pound or so on average. That's exactly what we expect, because creatine increases intracellular water. Muscles store creatine along with water, and that shows up as lean mass on a scan. So far, no controversy. Here's where the headlines got spicy. Over the full training period, both groups gained lean mass from lifting weights, but the difference between the creatine group and the placebo group was not statistically significant. In other words, according to this study, taking creatine did not lead to more measurable lean mass gain than training alone once you account for that initial water increase. The authors concluded that the apparent muscle gains from creatine may largely reflect water retention rather than true hypertrophy. And immediately, the internet did what the internet does. Creatine is a scam. Creatine doesn't work. Creatine is just bloat. But hold on, before we throw out one of the most studied supplements in history, we need to do what science actually demands, which is zoom out. One study, even a good one, does not overwrite an entire field. And this study was good. Solid design, real training, real adults, careful measurements, so we respect it. But we also ask where it fits in the bigger picture, especially for people over 50. Think about it this way. If you meet one doctor who tells you walking is useless for heart health, do you immediately stop walking? Or do you think, okay, that's interesting, but let me see what the rest of the evidence says? Science works the same way. Each study is one conversation, not the final verdict. So now let's step back and ask 2 very important questions that matter for aging adults. First, does creatine ever lead to real muscle gain that remains after the water effect is gone? And second, does creatine reliably improve strength, function, and training quality in older adults in ways that can't be explained by water alone? To answer that, we have to look at the broader body of evidence, including studies that specifically use washout periods. In these designs, people train with creatine for weeks or months, then stop taking it, allow the extra water to dissipate, and only then measure muscle size and strength. If creatine's effects disappear when supplementation stops, then yes, it was probably just water. But if the gains remain, something else was happening. And here's the key point. In many studies, including several done specifically in adults over 50 and over 60, the gains remain. Muscle size stays higher, strength stays higher, functional performance stays better. That alone tells us water isn't the whole story. Now let's talk about something extremely relevant to seniors: strength. If creatine only increased water inside muscle cells, we would expect size changes without strength changes. But across dozens of trials, older adults taking creatine alongside resistance training consistently show greater improvements in leg strength, grip strength, chair stand performance, and walking power compared to placebo. Water does not make you stand up from a chair more easily. Muscle fibers and nervous system adaptations do. Another line of evidence comes from imaging and biopsy studies. Some studies use ultrasound or MRI, which can distinguish contractile tissue from fluid shifts more accurately than DEXA alone. Others go even deeper and examine muscle fibers directly. These studies repeatedly show increases in muscle fiber cross-sectional area, particularly type 2 fibers, which are the ones we lose fastest with age and the ones most important for preventing falls. That's a huge deal for people over 50. There's also performance volume to consider. Creatine reliably allows people to perform more total work during training, more reps, more power, better maintenance of strength across sets. And we already know from aging research that training volume and intensity are two of the strongest predictors of muscle retention in older adults. Creatine doesn't magically build muscle on its own, but it often lets you train just a little harder, a little longer, and recover just a little better. Over weeks and months, that adds up. Now let's address why this new study might have found what it found without assuming anyone did anything wrong. One possibility is measurement sensitivity. The expected muscle gain from creatine over a few months is relatively small, often in the range of 1 to 3 pounds. DEXA scans, while useful, have an error margin that can be close to that size, especially in older adults where hydration status, gut content, and bone density changes all influence readings. When the signal is small and the noise is large, sometimes you just don't detect the signal. Another possibility is responder variability. This is especially relevant for seniors. Not everyone responds to creatine the same way. People with lower baseline muscle creatine stores, often those who eat less red meat or have age-related absorption differences, tend to respond more. Others respond very little. If a study sample happens to include more low responders, the average effect shrinks. That doesn't mean the effect isn't real. It means it's not uniform. There's also dosing strategy. While 5 grams per day works for many people, some older adults may require slightly higher doses or an initial loading phase to fully saturate muscle stores. Age-related changes in muscle mass, blood flow, and transporter activity can influence how creatine is taken up by muscle tissue. Some studies that show stronger effects in older adults use short loading phases or slightly higher maintenance doses. So where does all of this leave us? It leaves us with a very reasonable conclusion. Creatine absolutely increases intracellular water. That's not a bug, it's a feature. Cell hydration itself may even act as an anabolic signal. But beyond that, when combined with resistance training, creatine has repeatedly been shown to improve strength, training quality, muscle fiber size, and functional performance in adults over 50. Those outcomes do not persist if they're just water. Here's something else that matters. Even if part of the lean mass increase from creatine is water, that doesn't make it useless. Increased cell hydration can improve force transmission, reduce injury risk, and improve tolerance to training. For older adults, that can be the difference between sticking with a program and dropping out due to soreness or fatigue. Let's be clear about expectations, though. Creatine is not a miracle. It is not a steroid. It will not reverse decades of muscle loss on its own. If you are not strength training, creatine will not save you. If your protein intake is low, sleep is poor, and activity is inconsistent, creatine will not override that. Think of it as a multiplier. A small one, but a real one. It makes good training slightly more effective, and over time, slightly more effective matters a lot. If you're over 50 and lifting weights 2 to 3 times per week, eating enough protein, and sleeping reasonably well, creatine is still one of the safest, most researched, and most effective supplements you can use. If you're expecting dramatic changes in a month, you'll be disappointed. If you're playing the long game of strength, independence, and resilience, it can help. So don't panic when you see headlines. Don't throw out years of evidence because of one study. And don't oversell creatine either. It works, but it works quietly, steadily, and best when paired with smart training. Now let's talk about the questions I know are already forming in your mind, especially if you're over 50. Is creatine safe for aging kidneys? Should older adults take it differently? And does it actually help with real-world function, not just gym numbers? First, safety. Creatine is one of the most studied supplements in existence, including long-term trials in older adults. In healthy individuals with normal kidney function, creatine at standard doses has not been shown to cause kidney damage. This includes studies lasting multiple years. The confusion comes from the fact that creatine increases blood creatinine, which is a lab marker doctors use to estimate kidney function. But creatinine is a breakdown product of creatine. So when you take creatine, creatinine goes up even if kidney function is unchanged. That's not kidney damage. That's math. If you already have diagnosed kidney disease, you should absolutely talk to your physician before using creatine. But for the average healthy adult over 50, creatine is considered safe when used responsibly. Hydration matters. Consistent dosing matters. Megadosing does not provide extra benefits and is unnecessary. Now let's talk about function. This is where creatine really shines for seniors when combined with resistance training. Studies show improvements in sit-to-stand performance, stair climbing power, balance-related strength, and fatigue resistance. These are not cosmetic outcomes. These are independence outcomes, the ability to get up off the floor, the ability to carry groceries, the ability to recover from a stumble. Creatine also appears to help preserve type 2 muscle fibers, the fast-twitch fibers that decline most rapidly with age and are most important for preventing falls. Losing these fibers is one of the main reasons falls become more dangerous later in life. Resistance training helps preserve them. Creatine may help the training work just a little better. Now, dosing. For most older adults, 3 to 5 grams per day is sufficient. Some people benefit from a short loading phase of about 15 to 20 grams per day for 5 days, split into smaller doses, followed by maintenance. Others do just fine without loading. Consistency matters more than timing. Take it daily. With food is fine. With protein is fine. There is no magical post-workout window for creatine. One more thing worth mentioning is that creatine may also have cognitive benefits, particularly under conditions of stress, sleep deprivation, or aging-related energy decline. While this research is still emerging, it's another reason creatine is being studied so heavily in older populations. So when you see a new study claiming creatine doesn't work, remember what that actually means. It means in that specific group, using that specific measurement over that specific time frame, the effect wasn't detected. That's not the same as saying the effect doesn't exist. Science advances by accumulation, not by headlines. If you're training, eating enough protein, and your goal is to stay strong and capable as you age, creatine remains a solid option. Not mandatory, not magical, but useful. Let's bring this home with something grounded and practical. If you're over 50, the real question isn't, does creatine build muscle? In some abstract sense. The real question is, does creatine meaningfully support my ability to stay strong, functional, and independent over the long term? And when you frame it that way, the answer becomes much clearer. Creatine does not replace resistance training. It does not replace protein. It does not replace sleep. But it consistently supports those foundations. The muscle you build while using creatine largely stays when you stop, which tells us it's not just water. The strength you gain reflects real tissue and real adaptations, and the safety profile is better than almost any supplement on the market. At the same time, expectations matter. If you take creatine and do nothing else, nothing will happen. If you train inconsistently, results will be inconsistent. If you're expecting dramatic changes in a few weeks, you'll miss the real benefit, which shows up over months and years. Some people respond more than others. That's normal. Aging biology is variable. Genetics matter, diet matters, training history matters. That doesn't mean the tool is useless. It means it's a tool, not a guarantee. So here's the balanced takeaway. This new study adds an interesting data point. It reminds us that not every lean mass gain is muscle. It reminds us to measure carefully. But it does not overturn decades of evidence showing that creatine, when paired with resistance training, helps older adults train better, get stronger, and preserve muscle that actually matters. Stay curious, stay skeptical, but don't let headlines scare you away from strategies that are quietly helping millions of people age better. If you're lifting, eating well, and playing the long game, creatine is still very much on the table. If this helped clarify things for you, let me know in the comments whether you've tried creatine or if you're considering it now. I read those, and they help shape what we talk about next. I'll see you in the next one.